So, how good is Marowak Alola in Battle Stadium singles? Turns out, it actually has a decent niche as a wall breaker. We'll take a quick look at the rank 1 team from last season, and let's talk about why it was so successful. This is the set in question, and honestly, I don't think it takes too much of a genius to come up with this Marowak set in particular. Flare Blitz and Poltergeist are its best stab moves, and Sword Stance and Earthquake are really important in wall breaking because Sword Stance, of course, makes it really difficult to wall this Marowak, and Earthquake hits Toxapex and Tyranitar, which could be threatening otherwise. Honestly, the most difficult part of coming up with this Marowak set in particular might just be the speed stat. This one is outspeeding most slow or minimally invested Tyranitars and beat them to the punch with the Earthquake, which can flip this matchup at times. But I think the more important part here to focus on is the importance of a niche. And if you don't know what a niche is, Marowak being a unique fire ghost physical attacker, that is certainly one unique aspect about him, but that alone does not make a niche. A niche is like what relevant meta threats are you targeting? What roles are you performing on that team? On this team, as you can see, Marowak Alola's role here is that it can check Magnezone. It can break Porygon 2 and Toxapex cores. That is a role and a niche. And this team takes advantage of that quite well. So even though Marowak isn't necessarily the most common pick for this team, meaning that it might not have the highest utilized rate, it only comes out to counter specific threats. But it does the job well, so it has a place on the team. And now let's get into the games. We actually have a pretty tough matchup from the first game. Because we have a pretty bad relevant matchup, we are almost forced to bring Dragonite. At the same time, our ground type resists aren't the best either. And usually, for the case of the more standard Landorus T, both Dragonite and Porygon 2 match up quite well against it. But the thing with Rhyperior is that it actually again matches up also well against Porygon 2 and Dragonite. So we are in a bit of a pickle here. We are going to use the Tapu Fini in order to offensively check the Rhyperior and bring Dragonite for the Rillaboom, as I said. And our last is going to be Marowak. Marowak is going to be a pretty good offensive check to Celesteela and Regieleki as well. And depending on the spread on the Rhyperior, we might be able to outspeed it because we do have the higher base speed, and we're actually quite speed invested on this Marowak. So hopefully, unless they have a really turbo Rhyperior, we should be able to outspeed it. As long as we can get some chip damage and put it into Earthquake range, should be all good. Here, my opponent leads with the Rhyperior. And this is a bit of a relief because Rhyperior is definitely the most difficult Pokemon for me to switch into. I wanted to lead strongly against that, and I am rewarded for it. If I let Dragonite, for instance, that could have ended up being really bad. My opponent ends up going to switching right out into the Rillaboom, which is a completely fair play. I could, if I were Ice Beam on the Scarfini, that could have been a pretty good mid-ground, but I wanted to at least hit the Rhyperior for relevant damage with the Surf if they were to Dynamax, because that is a real possibility. Rhyperior has a great matchup against this team, and I want to give it as little room as possible to go for predictions. I am going to switch out into the Dragonite. It is my dedicated Rillaboom check. It is going to switch into Woodhammer, and that should be doing almost nothing. Unfortunately for me, the fact that I have a good matchup here with the Dragonite isn't too relevant because they also have the Rhyperior in the back.
and that has also a really good matchup against the Dragonite. I don't want to let it come for free and fire off a free rock move on my Tapu Fini, and that's why I preemptively go for the double switch. Because the matchup is not good, I want to try to pressure this Rhyperior as much as possible. So, because I know my weakness in this composition, I am trying to kind of make up for it with the plays. Here I go for the Moonblast here. I wanted to kind of uh, hit the Rillaboom switch in harder this time, but understandably he Dynamaxes here. And that is pretty big, as he is able to eat this Moonblast for almost no damage, and he is going to also be able to do a lot with this Max Rockfall. And I am in a bit of a pickle, because remember my two Pokemon in the back are Dragonite and Marowak Alola, neither of which are particularly great against this Rhyperior that is Dynamaxed. So it is a bit of a problem here, and that totally makes sense, because from his perspective, if I were Ice Beam, and if that was a really good time for me to go for the Ice Beam, and if I were to do that, then that could have been like the Rillaboom brought down to below half, and that could have been really bad. So here I'm gonna go for the max guard. The problem here is that I want to stall out the 3 turns of Dynamax with the from the Rhyperior, but in order to do that, I'm gonna have to go for the max guard here and then put the damage in with the max geyser. But because if the reason why I took so long to go for this move is that if I max guard here, then they can actually go out into the Rillaboom with the max on the max geyser, and that could end up really costing me here. But I am just gonna now that I'm committed, I'm gonna go for the geyser 100%. It should not kill because of the sand and the Dynamax and all these other factors that are in favor of a Rhyperior, and it just eats that pretty handily. And you can see why Rhyperior is actually a non-meme pick. It is able to survive these 4 times super effective special moves with the help of things like Assault Vest, and it is actually really terrifying here. And here, even though I am aware of the possibility of the Rhyperior being a faster variant than my Marowak, I do have the naturally higher base speed, but Rhyperior are known to use quite a bit of speed investment themselves. But I am also quite speed invested on my Marowak, and I'm not going to win by going out into the Dragonite for sure, so this is my only chance of actually winning. And I will be going for this Earthquake if I am faster, and I am, and that should be an easy knockout, and that is one huge threat out of the way. And this is actually looking pretty good for the Dragonite to clean up. And honestly, the only thing that could stand in the way is like a Subleech Seed Celesteela, but he reveals Water Urshifu. And now I'm not gonna go into the Dragonite here, because they are known to carry Ice Punch. If I get predicted like that, that could be the end of the game, but he's going to have to lock himself into Surging Strikes and to actually kill me. And they revealed to be Bandit, so that was a fair prediction on their end. They had to lock into something, and they knew that if they lock into Surging Strikes and I get a Dragon Dance up with the Dragonite, I won the game on the spot. So that was pretty much a checkmate position for them, and good game, yeah. Our second game has a pretty interesting team with Cresselia and a Shedinja as well as a Credilli. the other four Pokemon, Cresselia, Urshifu, Garchomp, and Dragapult, are pretty standard though, but none of them have a particularly great matchup against uh, the Porygon 2, actually. And I'm gonna lead with the Dragonite here, and that should be giving me at least a positive lead matchup against the potential Urshifu lead. Because that, I think, if we bring those three, that's the biggest problem here. And I did deviate a little from the how to pick guide in that I brought both Dragonite and Porygon 2. But because how physically oriented all of their threats were, I felt pretty fine bringing both Dragonite and Porygon 2. And if for any reason one of my physical walls get caught off guard, that should be still pretty fine. And on top of that, Porygon 2 is able to check both physical and special Dragapult anyways, and that is gonna make sure that Porygon 2 is going to be a useful member regardless. Here, they have a Cresselia, so obviously I'm going to switch out into the Marowak. I'm just going to go for a very free Poltergeist here. They have 0 switch-ins here, and I have a completely free switch-in to my Marowak. So this is like not a really fair matchup at all. I guess one part is the weakness of Cresselia and this type of switch-heavy gameplay. Cresselia does like to sit on the field, even though it's a wall. It's not very favored in these type of switch-heavy gameplay because it just doesn't have much immediate damage at all. So they are gonna go into their Garchomp, and not only are they gonna take heavy damage, they also reveal the Choice Scarf. And that means that I can go into my Porygon 2 completely free from any fear of Sword Dance, Rock Slide flinches, or anything like that. The best they can do is just an Earthquake, unboosted Earthquake at that. And a crit Rock Slide does that much, so this is pretty free. I'm just gonna go for a Tri Attack. If they go into the Cresselia, then well, so be it. I'm just gonna be able to get a free switch into the Marowak anyways, and they are gonna go for the switch into the Cresselia, as they should be able to take this Tri Attack for almost nothing. But unless they double out, I'm gonna get a free attack with Marowak again. And I get a freeze, but I mean, it really doesn't matter what they go for here. It just saves me like 20% HP from the Marowak from being hit with a potential Psyshock or anything like that. But I'm gonna be able to take no damage because Cresselia is frozen solid. But I mean, even if it weren't frozen, it's a bit of a deja vu here, isn't it? Because Cresselia, Marowak really punishes these free turns by just basically getting a knockout or doing so much damage that they might as well be knocked out. Garchomp is very crippled here, and Cresselia is frozen, so they let it go, which is totally fair. But even if they weren't frozen, they might have ended up having to let it go, but just because it is either let Cresselia take the hit or have something else in the back be KO'd. And Cresselia will still be alive, sure, but they'll be alive to just give me another free switch in later. So yeah, that's why having these types of advantages switch cycles is so important. Here I'm just gonna sack the Marowak here. It has done its job, and I don't want to get any setup on the Dragapult. If I go into the Porygon 2 as the Dragon Dance, that could have been really bad. I get a miss with the Poltergeist here, but not a big deal here at all. And I'm expecting to be taken down here, but they are gonna go for the Phantom Force,
And yeah, it is super effective, sure, but that just means a completely free switch in to my Porygon 2 in the back. And we know all three of their Pokemon. A very low health Garchomp and the Dragapult. I'm just gonna immediately Dynamax with the Porygon 2, and this physical Dragapult has no chance to win this 1v1. I'm just gonna keep boosting my physical defense and should be able to win against the Dragapult and the Garchomp both. And I guess the game's pretty much over here. The only thing I probably need to do is make sure not to go for the max darkness as opposed to max steel spike, because if they keep going for the max Wormwinds, my physical defense is going to be lowered, and that means that Porygon 2 isn't going to be doing too much damage. I am just better off going for the steel spikes, and at the end of my Dynamax, just go for the foul play. That should be able to KO the Dragapult.
And honestly, because this game is pretty much wrapped up, I can honestly talk about anything else I like. I guess today, for the question of the day today is, what is your favorite Porygon 2 set? Of course, Marowak is going to be the highlight of this video, but of course, Marowak is more of a niche situational Pokemon, and a trait of those type of Pokemon is that they are kind of limited, restricted in what they are capable of and what types of sets they are running. But on the other hand, more generalized Pokemon like Landorus T, Porygon, while they are very common, so they lack the element of surprise in the fact that they're there in team preview at all, they kind of make up for it by being able to run these so many different types of sets. So I've shown you three rental teams from the top three teams from the last season, and actually someone pointed out that they all have Porygon too. But it was also interesting to also note that even though every team there had a Porygon 2, they all had different sets. They all had different EV spreads. So there's the physically defensive Porygon 2 that I am showing here with this team, but there's also the Hyper Beam download set on the rank 2 team, and there was the substitute more of a bulky offense set with modest but not fully especially the offensive set spread, so that was more of a custom spread, and all of them have their place. So I guess, what is your favorite Porygon 2 set and why? Because all of them have a really good place to exist in the meta right now, and feel free to share your opinions on the comments down below. And to get back to the game, we have a pretty healthy Porygon 2 with a lot of physical defense boosts, and I'm just gonna go for the foul play to take out the Dragapult, and also the Garchomp in the back as well. So honestly, I'm not sure why this guy isn't forfeiting. Might as well just kind of fast forward the rest of the games here, I think.
And the next game is against the Porygon 2 Toxapex defensive balance. And that means that it is Magnezone's time to shine. But Magnezone is good, and Porygon 2 also has a pretty good matchup on this team. But the problem is the Pheromosa. We don't really have a clean switch into Pheromosa, and that is going to be a problem. And actually, that means I am going to lead with this Slowking Galar. That actually has a decent lead matchup against the Pheromosa. And I'm gonna bring both the Porygon 2 and the Magnezone in the back. And if a Pheromosa could be a potential threat, then I will just try to Dynamax the Porygon 2 and try to trade like that. Not the best case scenario of Pheromosa having to face against Pheromosa, but I am sure I can kind of play out of that matchup, especially if I can get a quick poison with the Sludge Bomb. That would be ideal, but even if I don't, that means that they are going to have to just go for the immediate U-turn to preserve their Focus Sash, at the very least. So they do lead the Pheromosa. It is one of the most very important things on the team for my opponent. And as planned, I'm just gonna go for the quick Sludge Bomb, and I should be able to just bring it down to Focus Sash, whether it be with the Sludge Bomb or the Flamethrower. And actually, as you can see from the triple axle damage, I can take another one pretty comfortably. So even if the poison doesn't happen, but it does, and that is such a nice poison, Sludge Bomb poison. And that is just gonna take out the Pheromosa in one hit. And now that is a big threat out of the way. And I'm pretty sure Porygon 2 just has a field day here. And they bring out their own Porygon 2 against my Slowking Galar. And I'm not sure that is a Slowking check, my man. And if I can just get a Sludge Bomb poison, that could be really putting the Porygon 2 on a timer. And I think I can just afford to go for another Sludge Bomb, and I can get a lot of damage on this Porygon 2, and just go out into the Magnezone and just start going for attacks. And I get another poison right away, so that is really nice. But actually, there is the possibility of Facade, because that seemed to be especially defensive. And yeah, Iron Tail, especially defensive, Ice Beam, Facade, that is totally a set. And that means that I am just gonna bring out the Magnezone for free, and Porygon 2 is way below half against a specially attacking Slowking Galar, as you can see. So even though Slowking not the most big immediate damage dealer, with the Sludge Bomb poisons, with the Future Sight, can really put pressure on even one of the most specially defensive Pokemon in the metagame, which is Spadef Porygon 2. And this Discharge doing quite a lot, and with the poison, it seems like it's just completely negating the recover, so it is only a matter of time until I get a free crit. So that is why they just kind of go fish for the freeze, I guess. But they don't get it, and Magnezone is just gonna take out the Porygon 2. And let's see what their last is, but I have all three of my Pokemon very healthy, so I'm sure I can handle this. Especially if it's a Nihilego last, as my Magnezone will be able to take it out. So yeah, the forfeit, good game, thank you guys for watching, see you next time, bye.